everybody.
Good evening.
How you folks? I think talking about, my name is Pastor Q, like she said, pastor of the church where I was Skid Row, also founder of Creating Justice LA in downtown Los Angeles. We're doing some amazing things, just opened a piece of healing center in Skid Row last year. And things are going well with that. About to purchase a grocery store in a minute. That said, I wanted to talk about the election. I'm also a faith movement organizer with Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. That organization was started by the Reverend James Lawson, who just passed away not too long ago, along with some labor leaders. I think Maria Elena DeRosso was part of that group of folks who actually started CLU. And I celebrated my 10-year anniversary at CLU in the same month that Pastor Lawson passed away. I want to open the conversation. By the way, how long do I have? 10 minutes, 5 minutes?
Yeah, and 15.
Good.
10 and 15.
Okay, so I want to start with a quote by Huey P. Newton. He said, "We recognize that in order to bring people to the level of consciousness where they would seize the time, it would be necessary to serve their interests in survival by developing programs which would help them to meet their daily needs. These programs satisfy the deep needs of the community, but they are not solutions to our problem. That is, we call them survival problems or survival programs and so on, meaning survival pending revolution." Can you say that with me? Survival pending revolution. Now, he talked about seizing the time. And in order to seize the time, you have to know how to read the time. We've been here before. In the previous election, they told us we had to vote in order to save democracy. We're saying the same thing now. We've been here before. My question is the duopoly sufficient to save democracy? Is the duopoly sufficient in order to save democracy? In 2021, with the Poor People's Campaign, we went to Washington, D.C., and we challenged, at the Senate, we challenged them to end the filibuster. It's when they had, I think, control of the Senate. We challenged them to end the filibuster. And Biden at the time said he did not want to end the filibuster because he did not, it was too divisive. We remember, as much as many of us love President Obama, it was also President Obama who said when it was time to get another Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, that he did not want to do it because, or he tried, but he didn't want to push because it was too divisive. So the question becomes, is the duopoly enough to save democracy? Or is it hanging by a thread? We know that prior to Biden was kind of struggling in the polls because of the way he handled Palestine. And as someone who was on the ground with a lot of the college students, and then watching all of the babies being slaughtered in Palestine, it was really hard for us to figure out how can we vote for Biden again? Can we do it when we're sending so much money for weapons to Israel? We're spending so much money on policing, $3.5 billion of our budget, even here in Los Angeles, Storey policing almost 50% of our budget. Wow, we have houseless crisis, a homeless crisis. And then I'm talking about the time, and then you had Palestine, which was a struggle for Biden, and then you had the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. And you saw the country swing. The momentum swung towards Trump. I challenge us that our democracy is shaky. And then Biden did the gangster move and announced that he was resigning. And then the folks within his party, and I got it from good sources, that they were trying to get both him and Kamala out in the Democratic Party. I got it from good sources. Can't reveal who it was, but they were trying to get both of them out. And that is why Biden, after he made the announcement, he also endorsed her. So basically, he's strong armed. Because our democracy is hanging by a thread. We know that J.D. Vance doesn't believe in democracy. He said he believes in small government. And he also believes that we should have more of a dictator or a monarchy or something. I can't. What's our best chance to win? Because we're always playing defense. How do we go on the offensive? So I challenge you as you're getting ready to vote. That probably should be one of the main things on your mind. How do we go on the offense? I want to be clear. In California, it doesn't really matter so much because we're not a swing state. Now, the black vote is a swing vote, but we're not a swing state. So before all this happened, I had already promised one of my friends to vote for him, Dr. Darrell West, and that's who I'll be voting for. That said, California doesn't matter that much. It's a swing state that's really going to make a difference. But the question becomes, who do we want to challenge? Who do we want in the White House, right? I challenge us that we need another powerful group, I don't know what it is, we need something outside of the two-party system. Something even more left, because we got something more right. Right, we got something more right that actually took over the the Republican Party. So we need something more left. Right, and we need to work from outside of the institution to build that, so that if this happens again, God may not send us a lifeline, because that's what happened. You got to recognize the time. What happened was we were sent a lifeline. Because the black woman will always save the society. It's always the black woman. That's why Biden's in office. It was the black vote. He had lost everything until he went down south. And climbed the Darrell, everybody voted for Biden. All black folk voted for Biden. And that's what Kamala got what she got. Black folks, and specifically black women who vote at a higher clip than anybody else. Last thing I'll say, we got a lot of brothers, not a lot, but we got a few brothers who said they're voting for Trump. I talked to some of them before, and I said, and most of the brothers who said they're voting for Trump, either they're
Yeah.
So I'm not telling people who to vote for. But I'm telling you, you've got to vote with offense in mind. What's our next move? You know what their next move is Project 2045. And we let them have it. All the internet, now Trump has distanced himself from Project 2025, it's too late for all of that. But my question is, how do we go on the offense? So when you're voting, it's not just, oh, I gotta vote to get this person, but how do we vote strategically? So that we can go on the offensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Q. Always have to think about. The work forward. And then our next person is going to speak is Isabel Storey, and Angela is going to introduce her.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Pastor Q, for really bringing some insight. Now I'm here to talk about Isabel. Isabel Storey is a Democratic activist and legislative advocate on the forefront of fighting for progressive values. Her priorities include a clean environment, promoting affordable housing and reducing homelessness, healthcare for all, protecting reproductive rights, and defending our democracy. She is a three-term California Democratic delegate. Isabel is an active member of the Environmental, Women's, and Progressive Caucuses. As part of her legislative advocacy, she secured the state party's endorsement of landmark bills to reduce single-use plastics in California and to make the second year of community college free. Isabel also holds leadership roles in Indivisible, California State Strong, Indivisible Westside Los Angeles, and Santa Monica Democratic Club. She has also coordinated voter mobilization events over the last 3 cycles for key California House races. For California Indivisible, as leader of the Healthcare and Reproductive Rights Work Group, she spearheaded advocacy for a number of bills, including one that significantly expanded Medi-Cal coverage and another that prohibits enforcement of out-of-state abortion restrictions in California. She's also been an ally on the front lines with California's Indivisible Green Team on environmental legislation, including its battle to push back against restrictions on rooftop solar. There's so much more I could say about Isabel, but I wanted to go ahead and come and share. Thank you, Isabel, for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Angela. Ooh, didn't know I did so many things. And here locally, I'm the Vice President of Legislation for Santa Monica Democratic Club, so I think that's why Reverend Janet asked me to speak about the ballot measure. So there's a lot of excitement right now at the top of the ticket. And I'll go ahead and say it, the enthusiasm for Kamala Harris that's, just, I think, sweeping the country, and what's it say with various political offices. But what's also often, confusing on the ballot is all these propositions. So that's what I've been asked to talk about. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I was asked to just highlight a few that might be of particular interest to this group. I will tell you overall, there are going to be 10 California ballot measures. There are going to be 3 for LA County, and there are going to be 4 here in Santa Monica. So one that I'm going to highlight, because I know this group has been very active on the reparations package that came out of the legislative Black Caucus. So some of you who worked on that know that there was this big study that took 2 years. They studied the effects of slavery and discrimination over the years, and then also came up with legislative, fixes and things that they wanted to do to provide some kind of remedy for all the injustices in the past. So the first step on that was 14 bills that were introduced in the legislature this year. They're in the process of going through. A couple of them have already been passed and are laws now. Many of them are going to be heard in the next month. And one of them that did pass is now going to the voters in November, so that'll be Proposition 6, the anti-slavery proposition. So you might think, slavery, didn't we already deal with that? Didn't we already outlaw that? Well, mostly, but not completely. So California joined the Union in 1850. It came in as a state that prohibited slavery, except as a punishment for a crime. So that's still in our Constitution where slavery is permitted in that situation. And that's why prisoners can be forced to work and they get paid, sometimes 30 cents an hour for doing some of these menial or dangerous jobs. The proponents of this measure don't necessarily want to discourage inmates from working. They're all for that, but they're against it being mandatory and they're against these really extremely low wages. So this measure would outlaw that and would say that any work that inmates do, they have to volunteer for. They can't be forced to do it. So the idea being that yes, they can work if they want to learn a skill or gain some experience, do something that's going to help them on the outside when they get out of prison, but they can't just be forced to do these jobs. Other states are doing this now. There's several other states that have put this into their state constitutions. We're in California, we're voting on that, and Nevada's going to be voting on that also in November. And it has a particular relevance, unfortunately, to African Americans because they're disproportionately incarcerated. It's still true. So, it's unfortunate that that is true, but it does affect them. And the Assembly member, Lori Wilson, who wrote this law, said, here's her quote, "It's a testament to our collective resolve to correct historical wrongs, ensure that every individual in California is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve." So, I think that's enough on that one. Kind of speaks for itself as to what it is. It's to get rid of the last trace of slavery and put that into our state constitution. The next one I want to highlight is Proposition 32, and that's called the Living Wage Act. And in very simple terms, that would raise the minimum wage in California from $16 to $18. I mean, it doesn't sound like a huge amount, but to people, who are at the bottom of the income scale, that really is a lot. And the people who are for this, they really wanted it to be more. But this is something where, as Cassie would say, we have to be strategic. Maybe it's not strategic, but we have to do it step by step, and this is a step in a good direction. So right now, when they started the effort for this, the minimum wage was $15. You might remember it took a long time to get there. There was a huge push that was fight for 15 for like 10 years. It was fight for 15, and then we got there and like you can't even meet your basic rent and food and your basic expenses for $15. There's an MIT study, and it's very interesting to look at the calculator that shows like by what county you live in, what is the minimum that you can make to just cover your basic needs. And in the cheapest county in California, that's $20, but I looked at LA County, and for a single person with no children, it's $26. And then it goes up from there, if you have more children and so on. With 2 children, it's $48. And it goes up from there. So we're still way below that, but at least this would bring it up to $16. I also looked up in Santa Monica, since many of us live here, you know, where are we in Santa Monica right now? And we just did increase it as of just July 1st from $16.90 to $17.27. And odd, you know, specific numbers, but that's what they are. But so even this would raise it in Santa Monica, because we're not quite at 18 yet. There's some more details to it. I don't think I need to go into all this, but it's a little faster for the bigger companies, for the employees, the companies under 25 employees, it's a little slower. But by 2026, everybody would be at $18. And then the other good thing about this is that it would peg the increases to inflation after that. So 18 would not be the top amount, it would just get to 18 fairly quickly. For the larger employers, it would be by this January. And then it would be tied to inflation, so there would be, it would rise every year according to inflation. Okay, so yeah, a number of these have to do with economic justice, so Proposition 33 is also about that, it's called Justice for Renters. And, you know, in a way, it's similar to raising the minimum wage. This is about expanding rent control to try to bring rents under control. I mean, we especially see it here in Santa Monica where the rents are out of control. They're skyrocketing and most people cannot afford, a lower income or middle income people can't afford to rent here. I know I'm a parent, you know, we own our home, we were lucky enough to buy it years ago. But our kids can't afford to live here on just a normal wage job, you know, they have to move somewhere else. So this Proposition 33 would basically allow communities to expand rent control. So why can't they do it now? Why does this have to be on the ballot? It's because about 30 years ago, there was a law called the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act that limited rent control in California in a number of significant ways. Like it said that there could be no rent control for any buildings built after 1995. Could not apply to single family homes. And also that there could be vacancy decontrol. So a long time ago, when I first moved to Santa Monica years ago, we had vacancy control, which meant that if you were in a rent controlled apartment and you moved out, the landlord couldn't just raise the rent like an unlimited amount. There was a certain percentage that they could only raise it that much. But now with Costa-Hawkins, someone new comes in, they can raise it, the rent an unlimited amount. So this proposition would attack all of those problems, and it would apply to the homes built after 1995, the single family homes, and it would have vacancy control so that landlords can't just raise the rent, you know, if there's a new tenant coming in. Who's for this? It includes pro-renter groups, social justice, labor groups, veterans, seniors, it seems like almost every group, and then who's for it are corporate landlords, and it's led by the California Apartment Association. So for obvious reasons, now, you know, I don't hate landlords, we need them to be running these buildings and owning these buildings, and they are entitled to a profit, but they're, you know, not entitled to outrageous profits, and the places have to be affordable enough for people to live. They're arguing that not being able to raise the rents as much as they want would discourage investment in building new housing. But there are several studies that have come out recently and said, no, that's really not true. That's not the way it works in the real world. And there's a group of 32 economists who actually wrote a letter to President Biden last year. And they said they have studied this, and they say that tenant protections do not limit new construction. They do not limit the supply of housing. And in fact, that rent control is an effective tool to protect the poor and middle and working class. So that I don't know if I'm supposed to tell people how I think they should vote, but you can kind of tell. What I think. Decide for yourselves.
Let them guess, yeah.
Okay, so those are the three state measures, that I chose to talk about. And there's going to also be one in LA County, that is probably gonna be called Measure A, but they won't give it the official name, for about another week and a half or so. But the longer name is the Affordable Housing, Homelessness Solutions and Prevention Now Measure. And so if you want to think of it in a simpler way, it's to raise what they call homelessness sales tax. So what is that? You know, we have a sales tax. Well, in 2017, they added just a quarter-cent tax, to the sales tax, just for homelessness prevention and making housing more affordable. So that's been in effect. That was called Measure H. And the Board of Supervisors voted on this in June. It's qualified for the ballot with signatures, like over 300,000 signatures. And then the Board of Supervisors has unanimously approved it to go on the ballot. So the previous measure, that was just a quarter-cent tax, was very successful. That was called Measure H. Let me see, what did it do? I was thinking, yes. They say it prevented more than 30,000 people from becoming homeless. And it placed more than 100,000 in permanent housing. So the problem with it is that it is due to expire 2027. So people were looking at this and were saying, well, this is very successful. We don't want it to expire. In fact, we'd like to do more of this. So that's why they want it to increase it to 1/2 cent. And it can do a lot, but still, as far as a sales tax, it's very minimal. So it's just 1/2 cent per dollar that you spend. It's expected that if this passes, the revenue will be $1.2 billion annually. It would only go to affordable housing, mental health care, and substance abuse treatment. And it has some rigorous oversight to make sure that money is going for what it's intended to go for. We know we have a big problem with this. I'm sure Pastor Q, sees this, and we see it in our streets around Santa Monica. On any given night, there are more than 75,000 people in LA County who are homeless. And we lack affordable housing, we lack services, and the problem is just getting worse. So this small tax is something that could help. What else do I have to say about it? I have some of the supporters or many housing providers, labor groups. And there's no formal opposition announced yet, but I imagine that, that may come out in the next month or so. There's some anti-tax groups that could come out against it. But anyway, that's what that measure is. Of course, there are other measures. I don't have time to talk about all of them. So I really encourage people to get informed, as we go forward. There are big groups that spend tons of money to influence elections, and what they have is like these little ads that say a few things and you don't know if they're true or not. And then you hear one thing and then you hear the opposite thing from someone else. So, wherever you can, I read the newspaper. There are 2 websites I could recommend you. One is ballotpedia.org. And the other is Vote For. Ballotpedia already has a lot of information on there. If you looked up some of these things now, you'd see it. The other one is vote411.org. That one doesn't have the information yet, but it will, and that's put out by the League of Women Voters. So that's a really great group that puts out just factual, non-biased information. So I really like to go to them, when I just want the facts, and I don't want someone telling me how to vote or their opinion. And then I can make a little plug for my club and myself, because we are actually gonna have a forum on all the ballot propositions on August 28th, Wednesday, August 28th. It'll be in this very room. We also do it hybrid, so people can come here. There's a Zoom. We're gonna have every ballot proposition, 3 minutes on each side. We're gonna have speakers pro and con. So we're gonna have people who, you know, so the people who wrote the bill, who are for it, we're gonna have the people against it, getting equal time. We're gonna go through every measure, and then if you're a member of the club, we're actually gonna vote on endorsements, like which ones, that we either gonna be for or against. But it should be very informative, it will also be taped, so if you ever wanna look at it later, I really recommend it, I think we do a terrific job on this, it's very informative. And so I just encourage everybody, however you vote, to just get informed and vote, you want your voice heard, you know, if our democracy is gonna work, everybody has to be part of it, so. Thanks for hearing me out. Thank you.
All right, get some good information, guys, yeah? Okay, now when it gets to Q and A, see what happens. Okay. This next young man. Hopefully will, you know, round out our speakers, our presenters tonight. Because he'll be speaking, kind of on the importance of upcoming election, threats of voter suppression, and other issues of concern, that to the NAACP. Let me just tell you a little bit about him. Mr. Darrell Goode, the NAACP Santa Monica Venice branch president and the NAACP Southwest Area Director for branches in LA County. He retired after serving many years as an academic administrator at Santa Monica Community College and also serving as an advisor and consultant to the College Board for community colleges nationally. Of course, I'm sure his resume is much longer than that, but that's all I got time for. So without further ado, let's be good. Oh, the karate part.
Good evening. You have to excuse me, so I'll be speaking to you in the language of the colonizers. And so I'm speaking to you in the language of the colonizers, so hopefully you can understand and translate it as best you can. That being said, the NAACP, we're about getting out the vote. As you know, our history, it's been literally in blood, something came to mind yesterday, Tanya Massey, who was executed, essentially. And I was watching because I have friends and associates working closely on that. And it reminded me of scenes of violence that I thought was in my past, what I used to do. But when I saw the family clean up all the blood, it's interesting. It was a shot in the head, but it went through the neck, so it means she agonized and bled out. We don't hear, you hear the shooting, you forget the trauma. To the family has to clean that up. There's no agency that comes in to take care of that. And particularly if you have families that are in trauma already, Pastor Q knows about that. 73, Skid Row was primarily a white male environment. And I was the African American community, men, women, children. That is not progress, people. And you can, I was down on Nickel Street, I was going to do clinical, and that turned me against going that direction. But anyway. Voting is very significant. You have to do it. The only option to voting is violence. Because if you don't get remedies by a reasonable governmental means, then there's no other option. You don't want other folks responding to a January 6th. However, if our African American history, we've dealt with that kind of violence for 400 years. It was just America got a chance to see it. So, in voting, we have 15 branches in LA. and I've got all 15 branches on board. Our vice president, Becky Landry, and Michelle Whitty, is reaching out to those respective agencies in our community, Women League of Voters and HRC, so we can collaborate in this community. And we're gonna do that across the county, and as many branches can get in community colleges. Carolyn Ball was one of our members. I think they registered 2,000, you guys were. There's 2,000 people in 2007 to get the vote out. It can be done, it has to be done. And so we're gonna push that. And we've got some electronic toys called Van, so we can help identify people who haven't voted or registered to vote. And if we can see, will they vote? We can, the propositions you heard, we have some support for those propositions, although they're, because we can support propositions. And one was mentioned about the wage of $18. As some of you know, fast food is $20 an hour. And you know, cities like LA passing ordinances trying to make those fast food people give these workers 7 to 10 vacation days a year. Now, certainly that might sound good, but that's a significant cost to our women of color, who are a huge 60% of the small businesses in LA. And it's going to would be a significant impact. So these propositions are going to require a lot of introspection and really looking at it. And we have to take it seriously. When Hillary Clinton was running in the community, she's a shoo-in. You know, she can win and blah, you know, the whole, remember the story. And so a good friend of mine, he passed away. At the time, he said, you know, you gotta vote for Hillary because she's the one that can win, right? And I know the history of my grandparents who were threatened, you know, and people who died. I thought to myself, it comes down to that. After all their sacrifices, I gotta vote for a person who she's a white female and can win. You know, that's just what it was, you know, at the time. And so I went and looked at what each candidate's story they were given. And in fact, I found out who I wasn't going to vote for Obama had a stronger story. That's the importance of taking your vote seriously. And we've got to encourage everyone to take that vote seriously. If you're not a white male with property, there's a time you're always to vote. Right? I don't know if you know that history. And gradually, other folks that vote, then it spread to African American men first and then women. So this is a sacred right that we have to value. And again, retribution is a consequence, is restoration. These are words and language of colonizers. So if you're African American or Black, everyone else has gotten reparations put up. And the NAACP has been doing this for a long time. It's just picked up momentum in the last 15, 20 years. And to give you an example, when I say we speak the language of colonizers, when Brown versus Board of Education passed, everyone was happy. We thought it was going to be a new day. The Brown schools in Hawaii were changing because, you know, they were segregated. I don't know if you knew that or not. It was a great segregation. So the Brown versus Board of Education was to make things equal. The very next year, I read this book by Charles Ogletree. He's a law professor. He died a short time ago. I read it. He talked about all deliberate speed See, that's the language of the colonizers. Most of us think, if you say all delivered speed, let's get it done, right? But there's a big dictionary, unabridged, with language that the colonizers have to manipulate people who are not part of that construct. All delivered speed is a nautical term, which means go as slow as you can. Don't take any chances and get there whenever you want to. That's all delivered. So when we speak, if you're a human being or it happens to be Black, you know, I come from a generation that we were fighting for our humanity, right? So that's why the voting was important. Because we want the right to be treated as men and women. You know, in my generation, we had 68, 69, 70, we saying the Blacks were proud, right? But initially, this whole concept of voting was to get people involved. We marched, we had dogs put on us, you know. And as a consequence, that movement got other people to vote, and now you have people out there voting. You have things that vote that finally came about. We got LGBTQ, we got your things to protect other folks. That was part of the initiative of voting. And that's why it's the NAACP, our focus for the next, other than the police doing something stupid. Our focus is getting out the vote. And in addition to that, there are a couple of initiatives on the proposition. I want you to read. They're around education. They're very important to our community. We had someone in the NAACP and Craig and Becky knows. They misrepresented our mission statement. So the state of California voted down a proposition that would help bring music and education to, and I'm proud of our branch, we helped pull her down, so she had to resign. But it was too late, the damage is done. And now we got a proposition now that we can come back and vote for. Same thing with rent control and joggers and all that. We gotta gain this ground back. That's why it's very important for everyone to take this voting very seriously. And because other countries, people look like me, for example, the colonization is complete. We call it gentrification in the United States, but it's the same thing. And these countries, they don't have a vote. They look like us, they're poor. Their leaders sold them out. Now, I don't know if you've been to Hanoi, Vietnam. We bombed them to the ground. Right? They threw out colonizers, the French, the British, and the Americans. You know, I don't say it lightly because some Americans that died were friends of mine growing up. But they've got the children go out at night, got most of they're building an industry in Africa, like in neighborhoods in our country. You know, the corruption or our representatives, you know, they don't have roads, no schools, and they'll send you a thing in the mail, say, hey, donate to this orphanage, because they're dying, it's not getting there. I've been there and seen this. So we have a valuable construct of being able to encourage everybody to vote. And we gotta take it seriously because otherwise it's chaos. And if we don't push it, you know, since the pandemic and to now, I've seen people I thought were normal, people I thought I knew. They're pro-Trump, Black, white, and Latino. I mean, I would thought these people would never work for someone who was obviously bigoted and racist because of because the information is getting out. And we've got, it's not just people that we think that's like, racist, Ku Klux Klan. We're working against think tanks for manipulating. Forget about China and Russia. We got our own think tanks in this country, Washington DC. How do we manipulate people? But that's why we have to come together as a community, get out the vote, get out the information, and move forward. So that's the NAACP's mission. You know, we can't support candidates, you know, except I did support my wife when she ran for judge. And we did that about taking donations to corrupt her honorship, but we can definitely do propositions and things, and we can only do things locally. Now, you talk about local things in Santa Monica, so the Santa Monica Venice branch, you're very instrumental in supporting those initiatives. And then, you know, LA and the state conference does the propositions you're talking about. So they have the governance of, that we follow those. And we'll be presenting that, Michelle sent me a cheat sheet, but we're gonna send out, Michelle, we're gonna send out a notification of the propositions we support to everyone, and it is probably in line with yours. So that's all I have to say for tonight, but appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Mr. Good. Darrell, really quick.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Angela. I have, what I have on the screen is the NAACP statement on project. Well, I'm not showing it. I'm getting ready to drop the link in. Is it okay that I drop in the information for the NAACP statement on project 2025? Do you think that would be helpful for folks?
Sure, that'd be
Oh,
great.
okay. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
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 I was saying I had it
Yeah.
on the screen.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there, but we've been living 2025 ever since we've been here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm just dropping that in there for everyone's edification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Let's give him a hand. Thank you so much. Thank you. And now we have Q&A, so Robbie's coming back up. Robbie, Angela, or there's the Q&A team.
All right. Everybody's tired, it ate too much. Angela, you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you stay ready. Okay, so this is how we do this. We start with the people in the audience that are present, and we number off, right, Craig? We number off. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3. You guys gotta come up. And the question for.
This open question.
Okay.
As I'm sitting here filling out these things, these postcards for voters, I can't help but wonder that many of, well, all of the ones I'm going through is in a red state. And I'm wondering specifically that those administrators aren't necessarily sensitive to Black voters. And so I'm wondering specifically if there's a strategy more or less look at, because this is too important, federalizing, you know, how voting happens. If indeed anybody knows that.
Anybody want?
I'm not sure if I understand.
How close is the strategy to federalize voting and election law, so it's taken out of the hands of somebody who has a conflict of interest? Brian Kemp won the Georgia election and he supervised his own race in Georgia. You know, ran against Stacey Abrams and he was running for governor and he supervised the election. So I'm wondering just what, if anything, the strategy is to see to it that that doesn't happen. And bring in some sort of nonpartisan group to oversee this whole process. Is that a legitimate strategy? And if so, where is that in reference to how we view voting these days.
I'm sure if I understand the question, but,
You want me to repeat it?
no. If you follow, there's always constant initiatives in Congress that said challenging on a federal level, what can be happening at federal level. And then because of sovereignty of the state, that's usually the construct of the battle within that state to resolve that issue. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I noticed outside, it was a state, any tampering with the ballot box hits a federal, it involves a federal statute, it breaks a federal law.
Right.
So I'm wondering how that applies if people, let's say, wanna uphold or mess with the counting of the ballot. People's vote.
Well, some of that's in place, but yeah.
I think you said you send in postcards to red states, right?
Right.
I think a good strategy is, I also work with clergy and laity, like we could, right? Include, we do a lot of, we send folks to Arizona, right? Some of our organizers in Arizona to work with the union, unite here. So I think getting in touch with some of those folks who already have people on the ground who understand the strategies. People like Unite Here, which is, you know, the hotel workers union, folks like Unite Here does a lot of that work. They even sent folks to Georgia to help with that election as well, with the Senate election. So I think what you're talking about is along those lines.
Great, thank you, Pat. And Darrell, thank you. Bonnie, come on.
I'm just wondering when these propositions take effect, and my comment being $18 an hour, if it takes place in 2035. Hello, how much is it gonna mean? So I'm really curious as to the dates, if you have them, for the three propositions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Isabel.
Yeah, I do happen to have the answer on that particular one, I mean, because each one is different and depending on how it's written and so on. But for the minimum wage, it is different depending on the large employers or the small employers. But for the large employers, it would go to $17 immediately. And by January, this coming January, it would be $18. It would be a little bit slower for the smaller employers to give them a little more time. So let me remember to make sure I'm the same. I just remember that the smaller employers have a little more time. Let me see. With the notes. Yes, okay, so the small businesses with fewer than 25 employees would only be $17 next year and $18 in 2026. So it does give them like an extra year, but for the large employers, I mean, it's a boost immediately to 17, and by January, it's $18. And then henceforward, it would go up every year with inflation.
All right, Dr. Nightingale. Number 3.
Good evening. My question is to Pastor Pugh. In your statement, you said that President Obama did not make a Supreme Court justice appointment because it was too divisive. Actually, he nominated Merrick Garland in 2016, the only opportunity, because that's when Scalia died.
Right.
But when he was nominated, you might recall that McConnell said that nothing that the President Obama would try to pass, that they would block, and systematically, because the Republicans were the majority in the House at the time, they in fact blocked most everything that he tried to in fact get done. He did in fact nominate and get past federal judges that were not blocked, but the Supreme Court justice, he nominated Merrick Garland, and that was blocked, so it wasn't a divisive
What I was
on
saying
his
is
part.
that he said he'd stop fighting it because it was too divisive. In other words, and it was getting close to the election, so he backed off.
He wouldn't have been able to get it passed anyway because he had a block from the Senate majority, which was Republican. So he could have fought to the very end if he chose to spend his time that way. But with the commitment on the part of the Republicans at that time, that would have been a mute and in vain issue. So I just wanted to clarify that issue.
Which
He
makes
did make the nomination.
right, which makes my point. Can the duopoly save our democracy?
I don't know, but you're voting for Cornel West, and I wonder what would that make a difference in terms of our democracy?
Well, I think I'm thinking about the future, not just now, but also the future.
I agree with your point about the needing to move away from the two-party system. I really do think that we need to look at what a new government structure would be, where people would be able to freely vote for who they wanted to vote for without having to be segmented into one party or the other party. So I think that that is something that we really do need to work on in the future. But at hand right now, do you think that a vote for anyone, Cornel West or anyone else, would be a vote for the opposite party?
Not in California.
Not in California, but it's not California is not the only one that makes the decision about who the president will be.
Yeah, but you got people voting third party, Jill Stein, right? You got
Her or, yeah, way back to
But I
later and all that.
I do agree with that, but I think we can do both ends.
And thank you for the work that you're doing there.
Hey. Okay, so let's count off again. 1. Somebody else? 2. Come on down here.
So I have some questions real quick. I wanted to know, did anyone have any, like information on who should the vice president support as her running mate? Other than pastor, because you're voting for someone totally different, but for Darrell and
Well,
if we had a choice, I mean, what would your ideal be? I already picked someone, but I just don't know.
my role today is NAACP, that's why it's like, I can't stay.
Okay,
Actually,
okay,
we're not supposed to say too much about
okay, no problem. So, okay, also, I wanted to just mention about the wage increase and stuff. And I mean, I understand, that, you know, a servant is worthy of his hire. I mean, they should get whatever they deserve, 20, 30, whatever. But I just feel like it's really sad when they pass on the money or the increase to the consumer. When you're talking about single women or single people trying to feed a kid or something like that. I mean, I went to like a breakfast place in Santa Monica, 2 of us, and we paid like over $65.
Yeah.
We're talking about just ordering a meal and coffee,
Yeah.
and she ordered tea. And then I remember, Dr. Gunn was saying how she went to the barbecue place and ordered something small for her and someone else, and it was $90.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
just feel like a lot of times that we want, our friends and family to be paid what they're worth. But I just feel that it's really sad when it's being passed on to the consumer, the charges.
So I like what Mr. Goode said about Black women being majority of small business owners, becoming a small business owner in Santa Monica of a restaurant myself. I'm very concerned about that. So, because no, I understand what you're saying, Gina, about passing it on to the consumer. However, let's do consider rents in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And how much a Black business has to pay as opposed to if they were, somewhere else. So, it's just a lot of different things to look at, and I am watching that very closely.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be in Santa Monica, it's everywhere, I just picked.
No, I get it, but I'm saying as a Black woman business owner in Santa Monica, it is concerning. Yeah, and I did work at restaurants myself, so I understand.
Oh, yeah. Well, my question is about Prop 33. I'm confused about rent control because I live in a building that was built in 1920. And I talked to a tenant who she moved because she had problems with the management company. But I bumped into her yesterday and she said that it was built in 1920, that they're exempt from rent control. So I'm confused about how rent control works. Because I understand Costa-Hawkins, but I thought that you said a property built after 1995, if each unit, they could decontrol the unit when they move out and jack it up to, because I know that they're asking 2440 for a studio. But since the building was built in 1920, I don't know how they can do that. She said that they've got a loophole, they're exempt from rent control, so I was gonna ask you about that, because I'm confused about that.
I don't know if this is okay, but we have Patricia Hoffman. Can we
Yeah.
ask her?
Oh,
The Costa-Hawkins, well, okay, you directed it to,
I just thought she would know.
she would know, but she would know probably
More,
more so.
okay.
But you can, Patricia,
Robbie,
you
I
wanna
also-
chime in real quick?
And Robbie, I also in the chat dropped in, there's a link and a quick bullet on what the yes vote supports as well as a no vote. And then go ahead, Patty.
Okay, so we'll talk about the chat later. So real quick, but Isabel, do you wanna speak to
No, I'll
that?
defer to
Okay.
Patricia.
Let's put it right here.
Okay.
Okay, so buildings built after 1970, I'm sorry, 1978 and before are subject to rent control. And so a building that was built in the 20s would be subject to rent control. The decontrol means that if there's a vacant unit and the landlord wants to charge 2440 for a single, and someone's willing to pay that, that will be what the rent is. It becomes rent controlled again at that rate, so that the annual increase in rent can only go up as much as the rent control board allows it to go up. And each year in July, they determine how much the increase will be for the year, and it goes up as of September 1st. There are two numbers that this person might be interested in calling, and I'll put in the chat. One is the rent control board itself, and there are public information officers and people who will speak to the public, and then the SMER hotline, and I'll put those two numbers into the chat.
Which
So
we do have Erica Leslie from Rent Control on as well, but I think you've addressed it, Patricia, no? Did you
Pardon?
understand what she said?
Who's
Erica
Patricia?
knows more than I because she's actually,
Patricia's been.
Oh, Patricia.
been up
Well, no,
around.
it's confusing to me because you just said it was built in the 20s, so it should be covered under rent control. It shouldn't be, the units shouldn't be decontrolled if it was built before 78 in the 20s.
yes, they get decontrolled when they're vacated. And as I think it was Isabel who was saying, that when we passed rent control in 1979, the unit continued to be rent controlled even when someone moved out. And then around 1999 or so, Costa-Hawkins passed, and that said, no, when someone moves out, it's no longer controlled. So what we have is decontrol followed by recontrol. So they can raise it to market rent, but then it can only go up as much as rent control allows. So, it's sort of a hybrid system, and hopefully we can pull it back into into vacancy control and make it so it can't go up dramatically like that.
But does Prop 33 repeal Costa-Hawkins?
Yes.
You might have to repeat that.
Yes, it repeals both of
I
those.
can answer that.
And, the limits.
Erica said she could answer it.
Okay, Erica, did you wanna chime in?
Prop 33 is for the repeal of Acosta-Hawkins. It's plain and simple. It's vacancy decontrol, but it's also to return local control back to the local, to the locality instead of the state taking control of it. Does that provide some clarity for you? And I apologize, I'm in a bad spot right now.
Yeah, she can't understand you, so what would you suggest for her to do, Erica, cause she can't really hear you?
Don't touch it, yeah, don't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's on her end.
Can you hear me a little better now?
No,
Erica?
it's,
Can you hear me better?
Janet, okay, so let's move on, we'll get you,
Oh, she froze.
connect you the dots in a minute. Give us a minute, okay, so
Okay.
that's all for in here right now. Angela, let's go online. Angela, you got any questions online?
No, not that I see, but I know that was
Yeah.
gonna be my question as well, was regarding, if they wanted to, deconstruct the repeal of Costa-Hawkins a little bit more, just to make sure everybody understands exactly what's happening with that. Give them more insight on that vote.
So who are we talking to? Are we talking to Isabel, Erica, Patricia? I mean, who do you want to hear? Pick your choice.
Whoever, whoever can provide greater insight. Go ahead, Erica. Are you clear now?
I don't know. Can you hear me better?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So the short answer is that it returns control to the localities. It does repeal the Costa-Hawkins. And I hope that provides fair clarity for you. I'm actually at the hospital with my son, so that's the reason why my audio is awful. I was planning on being there, but I can't.
And I think Renee's question was also around the fact of market rate, which I think Patricia kind of answered, but again, having understanding on how is it that you can be in a rent control building and yet when someone moves out and another person moves in, it gets jacked up to that quote unquote fair market rate, which really ain't fair.
Well,
Nobody said fair market rate. We said market rate, and that's because of the state law.
that you can, when somebody moves out, it goes to market rate. It's vacancy decontrol. So the second somebody moves out of a rent control unit, that freezing time where they started their tenancy, it goes up to what the market rate is in the area, as far as it can go. And that's what more people want. I'm not going to say people that are renters, but I'm saying the owners and landlords, they would want that extra money.
Okay, so the young woman who had actually asked that question, I guess she went out for a second. So anybody else have any other questions about? Everybody understands. Hope your son is gonna be okay, Erica, at the hospital. Thanks for coming on. Just for being present. We appreciate it. Anybody else have questions? All right, let's jump to our feet and close this thing out. Let's give all our speakers a hand clap. Yeah. And this is how we do this. We everybody up, form a circle, please. Everybody online, unmute. Come on down, come on. Let's go a little quicker, folks. Mr. Owl, they had some numbers for you.
All right, welcome to the closing circle.
Don't get mad at me, but I get to run around.
Not mine, you unmute because we're gonna be doing the meeting. Go ahead, I'm Robbie.
Okay, this is how we do this. We all join hands, let's connect. Best we can, somebody grab my elbow. Okay? And, I had a little thing that I wanted to play. It's totally out of, I guess, out of